Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Nelson, here on this Thursday afternoon, and it's a lot of big things that happened in basketball earlier, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about those things that happened in basketball. First we're going to go ahead and start with injury updates, because there were some players that recently got injured, and players that shouldn't have, and it'll impact a lot of these players' seasons, particularly Karl-Anthony Towns. It's going to impact the Timberwolves season. And we also, in the second segment, we are going to talk about Dartmouth, an Ivy League school men's basketball team. They recently made history with a very crazy move that I really didn't expect from them. I'm going to get more into that in the second segment. And then in the third segment, we are going to do our NBA recap, as we always do. But before I begin with the injury update, I'd like to remind everybody, as always, to please remember to tip and to donate, to get your comments recognized, and to use the link that is displayed below the ticker and the link that is displayed below in the description. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Helps the show, makes the show much more interactive, and it puts your comments directly in front of my screen. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and get into some of the big injuries that happened in previous nights. So we'll start with the big one. I don't want to start with LeBron, because I know how everyone feels about LeBron, and it doesn't really look like that he had a major injury, but we are going to talk about Karl-Anthony Towns. Now, Karl-Anthony Towns has been diagnosed with a torn meniscus in his left knee and is out indefinitely for this season. So this is a big problem if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves, because he is a key aspect to the team. He is the second scoring option for the team. He scored 62 points at one point in the game. He ended up losing that game, but regardless, he is a very vital piece to this team. The Timberwolves, they really did a good job in pairing Karl-Anthony Towns with Rudy Gobert. I wasn't entirely sure how that was going to work out, given how Karl-Anthony Towns has traditionally been a center, and in the league right now, with how it's played, putting a center that's not relatively fast at the 4 is not as popular as it was back in the 90s or in the 80s, where they would put two centers at the power forward and the center and sort of disrupt things in the paint. This is a completely different era where it's sort of seen as a bad thing if you have a lot of centers in the rotation, and not only that, a lot of centers that don't necessarily that don't really mesh well, I guess you could say, given how they're really, both of them are relatively slow on their feet, working on rotation. But so far this season, it really hasn't made that much of an effect on them. And their defense as a team, they are the number 1 ranked defense in the NBA. So with that in mind, they've been paired up relatively well. And the Wolves, they use Karl-Anthony Towns' length, because he is really tall, to the best of their ability. Because given that he's tall, he's able to contest shots a lot easier than a lot of these smaller guards are able to when they're rotating on defense. So with this in mind, I really think that this might we could see the Timberwolves drop all the way down from the 1 seed to maybe even a play-in spot if the team doesn't really play well. I remember back in the beginning when Joel Embiid got hurt. If you guys paid attention on this podcast, I said that I really thought that the Sixers would have been fine with how they were playing against the Denver Nuggets without Joel Embiid. But so far, that has not been the case for the Sixers. And with that happening, I'm sort of a bit on edge in saying that the Timberwolves will be fine. They have a great team. I don't want to say that just yet, because again, there's a lot of chemistry involved with this team, and I understand Cat, he might be the second option, but that doesn't mean that he's not important to the team. And his three-point shooting is incredibly valuable. He is arguably the best three-point shooting center in NBA history. So losing him is definitely going to take a toll on this team and their record. But why don't we go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off with Ben Simmons. You guys already know how I feel about Ben Simmons. Well, he's injured again. He is out for the rest of the season. It says that for the remainder of the season, he is going to consult with specialists and explore treatment options for the nerve impingement on his lower back. I don't know about you, but that just sounds like a bunch of malarkey to me. It might just be because I really, really don't like Ben Simmons, but it really seems like he's just making every single excuse not to play a single game for the Brooklyn Nets or for anyone. He is practically I don't want to say he's scamming, but he is taking a lot of money away from all of these franchises and still not playing a game. And he's only played 15 games this season, and his salary per game is $2.5 million. So he is literally getting paid to sit down and watch an NBA game. And that just infuriates me because you guys already know how I feel about Ben Simmons. He is a super freak athlete, but his mentality is just unbearably lazy, in my opinion. And he doesn't seem to change whatsoever. At any point in time where he could sit out due to an injury, he is going to sit out. And I just can't stand it. What is going on in his head? It does not make any sense to me how somebody who's 6'10" and really good at basketball and constantly says, I should be in the starting lineup, I can help this team, and then just doesn't show up when they need him. And my problem with Ben Simmons, it literally started back in 2021, 2022, when he was going to, it was said, allegedly, that he was going to, play in the playoffs against the Boston Celtics when the Nets would return back home to sort of help the Brooklyn Nets and hopefully win the series. But that ended up not happening for some reason, and it kept on. It looked as if, based off of the news that and a lot of the things that were trending, that he was almost a guarantee to. It was almost guaranteed that he was going to play in this in that series. But then he ended up not playing in that series, and then the Nets got swept. And ever since then, my opinion for Ben Simmons has completely soured, and I have lost all hope for him. In every single aspect of basketball, I have no hope. When he was on the Sixers, I legitimately thought that the Sixers did him wrong for throwing him under the bus. But after actually having him on the team these last couple seasons, I see why now, Doc Rivers and the rest of his team threw him under the bus, because he is a very bad influence in the locker room. There's so many players on that team that aren't getting paid as much as he is, yet they come in every single day to practice, and they come in every single time. And it's unfair to all of those players that actually try to put in the work and just aren't making that money, while Ben Simmons just sits down courtside doing absolutely nothing. But I completely digress, and it does not make any sense to me, because he's wasting his 6'10". Do you have any idea how rare that is? A 6'10" forward that can handle the ball like a guard and finish like he was supposed to be the next LeBron James. Do you have any idea how disappointing that is for the rest of this, for him, for his managers, for everything that has to do with him? It's unbearable. I've completely lost it with Ben Simmons, and I think now is the time for Ben Simmons to retire. And it's just time for him to retire at this point, because he's just sitting on the bench and he's just taking money from all of these organizations just by sitting on the bench. Like, he's not playing any of these games. And I really admire how the Sixers, they wouldn't compensate him for a while, while he was sitting out, because he wasn't fulfilling the deals in his contract. He was supposed to play, and he just hasn't been playing whatsoever. And it's really infuriating to see that from an NBA player his height and as talented as him. And another update is Jalen Brunson. He's still day to day with the Knicks. Julius Randle is also still out. Same with OG Anunoby. OG's I believe he's expected to return sometime next week. But then again, he could still be day to day. I mean, surgery is a really tough thing to go through, especially as an NBA player. And it might impact the Knicks this season. I think they're the only team that could legitimately compete with the Boston Celtics when they're healthy. I don't know why. I just have faith. I just have so much faith in this team. And another update, if you guys picked up or if you guys paid attention to one of the shorts that I did, Bismack Biyombo in Portland recently, after a timeout, he just randomly collapsed on the court. And it was completely out of nowhere. He dapped up his teammate and fell on his back. It was very, very scary to see. And I didn't watch that live. I saw a clip of it. But seeing him go down like that, it reminded me of Damar Hamlin. And if you guys watch football, and I'm sure a lot of people here watch football as well, when Damar Hamlin went down, the entire world was completely shook. And obviously, Biyombo, he's not... I can't even say that he's not as famous, because, again, Damar wasn't as famous until he literally, died on the court, died on the field. So, but he is okay. That's the update. That's the most important thing. He is okay. We don't know exactly why he collapsed just yet. So the jury is still out on that. But as of right now, he's okay. And that's the important thing. The player safety around this league, I think, is the most important thing, and we need to make sure that these players are okay and everything is totally fine with them. It's very scary to see that. It just goes to show you how fragile your life is. It could be gone in an instant, and it's incredibly scary, because again, it seemed like you wouldn't really expect an athlete that is at peak physical form, compared to us average human beings, to just randomly collapse like that, just out of nowhere. You really wouldn't expect that from any of these athletes, because they're healthy, they're supposed to maintain they're supposed to be healthy for the rest of the season, and you really expect them to be healthy. And when they just, for lack of a better term, just die out of nowhere, just randomly just collapsing, it really scares a lot of us, because our life is incredibly fragile, and whenever it is your time, it's your time, and that's just a very, very scary concept to think about. But with that, those are the important injuries and what I wanted to talk about. I'm very concerned about the Timberwolves and their season. They might see a drop in the power rankings. They might see a drop in their standings. The Brooklyn Nets, they're already lost. That team is it. They're done. There's nothing that they can do. They're probably gonna make the play-in, and they probably won't even make the play-in at this rate, with how Chicago and how the Hawks have been playing recently. They might not even make the play-in. And with that in mind, there's really no hope for this team. There's really no hope for the Nets. But now we're going to go into the second segment, where things get a little bit more interesting. Dartmouth recently filed a protest. Not really. No, pardon me. They did not file a protest. The team voted on joining the local service employees union. And the Ivy League school, Dartmouth, the institution, they had a problem with that. So I'm going to briefly talk about that after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to talk about the situation going on in Dartmouth, about how some of the players, on whether or not they should be considered as employees or if they're just considered as students according to the school. But before I begin with this segment, I'd like to remind everybody, as always, to please remember to tip and to donate, to use the link that is in the description and the link that is displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. The link is gsmcpodcast.net. Helps the show, makes the show much more interactive, puts your comments directly in front of my screen. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the second segment where we talk a little bit about Dartmouth. Now, this issue has been, it's sort of been brought up because of NIL deals. Like, that's sort of been, the main issue. So now we're seeing the bad side of what NIL deals could bring to colleges and organizations. So I'm just going to read exactly what happened. This came from ESPN. The Dartmouth men's basketball team voted 13-2 on Tuesday to join its local service employees union. And this marks the first time any group of college athletes has taken a public action as employees of their school and potentially sets a precedent that could significantly alter the business of college sports. Tuesday's vote was the players' first official action as employees and the next step toward bargaining with the school. And the players say that they hope other Ivy League teams will follow suit to create a conference-wide collective bargaining unit. And the university filed its appeal of the regional director's decision on Tuesday afternoon. The school could potentially continue fighting the idea that athletes are employees up through the Supreme Court, and this is a process that could take years to complete. So right now this is seen as now we're getting onto like I said earlier, now we're getting onto the bad side of these name, image, and likeness deals, because now, I knew that was coming. Once you start giving the college athletes money, they start becoming entitled. And they want the same money that all of these other players are making with NIL deals. And it begs the question, are these players employees or are they students? Now, the university had some things to say. The university said, this was Dartmouth College's statement concerning the players being classified as employees. For Ivy League students who are varsity athletes, academics are of primary importance, and athletic pursuit is part of the educational experience. Classifying these students as employees simply because they play basketball is as unprecedented as it is inaccurate. So since they're in the Ivy League, these varsity athletes, they do not get scholarship funds. And so they want some sort of way of getting paid. They want some way of getting paid because they view themselves as employees. However, the problem that I have with this is that they are an Ivy League school. And the students that come out of the Ivy League school, they're sort of it's expected that academics is the most important thing coming out of an Ivy League school. So with that in mind, I think that this move by the team is just as unprecedented as the Ivy League school says. Because again, like you got accepted into this college that only accepts like the smartest of the smartest students that you could possibly imagine. It's an Ivy League school. It's what they're known for. I know that's not the reason why it's called Ivy League, but that's essentially what they're known for. Like, they're known for their academics, and they're known for their academic prowess and how the students study and all of that kind of thing. So, I mean, on one hand, it does make a little bit of sense because, like, Ivy League players, they don't get scholarships. So a lot of the media sort of, like, agrees with this because it's like they feel it's a bit unfair for these players to be playing their hearts out in all of these games, and they're not making a single penny for it. And I get that standpoint because, like, playing a varsity sport is not an easy thing to do. It's really not. And a lot of people, like, they like to joke saying, like, I could get into the NBA easily. I could score a point with how bad the defense is. No, you can't. No, you cannot. You cannot score on these players, let alone score on an Ivy League team. And that's just how competitive, like, the game is. And that's, like, again, like, when it comes from an Ivy League school, however, I don't really see it going far because, again, you are in that school to succeed academically. The fact that you're also a varsity athlete is just a plus because the students, like it or not, you need exercise as well. And that's sort of like that's the best form of exercise that you could get as a student, being a varsity athlete in college or joining clubs or going to the gym, whatever it is. But, like, competing, like, that's where the fun is. And I totally understand that. And with these players, like, becoming this entitled, this entitled to wanting to get money, it really just shows, like, how greedy all of these students are. Because now they're not even, like, trying to go to college to, like, to do something educationally. Now they're trying to get into colleges to, like, make money off of them or make money off of the NIL deals that they make. And we've seen this like happening with NCAA now. It's part of the reason why Saban decided to retire from like and stop coaching Alabama football because a lot of the prospects that they got, they're thinking of transferring. And the first step, like the first question that they ask before they transfer is, how much are you going to pay me so I don't transfer? And that's a problem in my eyes because you are going to this school and so many people would love and would kill to go to schools like this for their educational purposes, like specifically Ivy League schools. I know I talked about Alabama, and even then, a lot of people want to get accepted into Alabama, and they just don't. And these college students are just these college athletes are just taking advantage of these NIL deals and, like, throwing the college out like it's some box of chocolate. And I don't agree with that whatsoever because there are less fortunate people out there who would love to be in the position that they're in. Like, when I was in middle school, my principal actually told me this story. There was a basketball player for the middle school team, and he was a really good player. But the only reason why he decided to pursue basketball was so that way he can get into a good college and get into a good high school as well. That was the main reason. He did not care about playing the game long term. All he wanted to do was get into high school so that way his parents didn't have to pay a single penny. And he ended up doing that. He ended up making it to high school and playing for the team, but he was much more focused academically because that was the reason why he wanted to get into that school. But it's just he couldn't get into that school given how his grades were at the time. And the only way to really do that was to play basketball. And now seeing that teams are just like abusing these NIL deals, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I really do not like it whatsoever. And another thing that I don't like is that they're asking to be paid when they aren't even that good of a team. Like, the team is has a record of 6-21. There's a lot more that team needs to work, that team needs to focus on rather than getting paid. Before they get paid, they should actually try to get good. And so that way they could actually have like a legitimate argument. Because if this goes to the Supreme Court and they take into account the fact that the program and like the players, they aren't the best team, that might hinder some of like the voting, because it's like, why would we pay these college athletes if they aren't good? Like, that's the reason why a lot of these college athletes are making the money that they're making. We see Caitlin Clark. She's making a lot of money off of NIL deals, but that's because she is so good at basketball. And you can't expect every single college team and every single college player to make that money. And they might not be asking to like make that money. They might be asking for compensation, but they go to an Ivy League school. Chances are they're going to get a job that pays them phenomenally because of how smart that they are. And I don't want to generalize like and say that every single one of those people is smart at the school. But 9 times out of 10, yes, if you get into that school, you are an academic weapon. And it really seems abusive to me. Like, it really is just an abuse of power, and it's something that I think it needs to be stopped? Like, do I think NIL deals should stop completely after this? No, I do not think that, because while I might disagree with this move coming in from Dartmouth, I do not disagree with the fact that I think some of these players deserve to get paid. And keyword, some of these players. Because, like I mentioned Caitlin Clark earlier, she deserves to get paid because she brings audiences to watch women's college basketball. The views have gone up tremendously. Women's basketball has actually, on average, has a higher viewership now than men's basketball. Like, that might change, like, coming March Madness, because everybody watches March Madness and, like, the men's teams. But still, the fact that the women's basketball in the NCAA is getting more views on average than men's basketball, it definitely says something about Caitlin Clark and about Angel Reese and about like all of those other women college athletes. And they should definitely, without a doubt, be getting paid, 100%. But athletes like this from Dartmouth, I don't agree with them getting paid whatsoever, because they're going to that school to be academic weapons. They aren't going to that school to make the NBA. No player from an Ivy League team is going to make the NBA. It's just that simple, and that's just how it goes. So with that in mind, I think Dartmouth, like, I don't see Dartmouth winning this case whatsoever. If they do win this case, then all power to them. But I really think it's a bad move, like, if they end up winning this case. But with that, we are out of time for the actually, no, we still have a little bit of time. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are these guys athletes or are they employees? In my personal opinion, it depends on, like, who you're talking to. It depends on who the athlete that you're referring to is. Because, like I mentioned earlier, it also has to, like, be determined, like, who draws in a lot of people and who draws in a lot of money. And the players that I just mentioned, they draw in a lot of money. But Dartmouth, not so much. But with that, now we are out of time with this second segment. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the third segment, where we give a quick recap of all of the NBA games that happened last night. So stay tuned after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, as per usual, we are going to do a quick recap of all of the NBA games that happened last night. And let's see, what game should we start with? Do we want to start with the Lakers? You know what? Why not? Let's start with the Lakers game. I know how a lot of people feel about LeBron, and they don't like LeBron, but too bad. So, and speaking of LeBron, once again, he does everything in his power to try to win, and they lose. It never fails. It's like, it's a triangle for the Lakers. It's like they start doing well, you start getting hope, and then they start to disappoint you. And now you're back to being sad. They wasted another 30-point game from LeBron James, 31 points, 13 assists, and 5 rebounds. They completely wasted that performance, and they also wasted Rui Hachimura's performance, where he ended the game with 29 points, 3 of 5 from 3, and 13 of 17 from the field. Everybody else on the team played horribly. And the Kings, for some reason, they always beat the Lakers. I don't know what it is. They just do not like the Lakers, and they take every single Lakers game extremely personally. Like, De'Aaron Fox does not like LeBron. It seems every single game that he plays against LeBron, he ends up dropping 40 points. And not to mention, Domantas Sabonis against Anthony Davis, he has a record of 9-0. Anthony Davis has never outplayed Domantas Sabonis in any game. And it infuriates me because Anthony Davis, he is supposed to be in the conversation as one of the best centers in the NBA. That's where he should have been. That's where he was projected to be in at this point in his career. But he's not. He's getting outplayed by Domantas Sabonis. Now, no disrespect to Sabonis whatsoever. He is a triple-double demon. He is so good at getting triple-doubles, and he actually had one last night. He ended the game with 16 points, 20 rebounds, and 12 assists, completely outplaying Anthony Davis. He shot 7 for 13 from the field as well, but this is the problem with Anthony Davis. He is so inconsistent. I say this every single time. One game, he'll end it with 35 and 15. Then the next game, he'll end with like 15 and 5. And I'm like, what is going on? Why can't you just stay consistent? It's almost like, I say this every single time, it's almost like he needs the media or people to criticize him or to tell him to start trying hard instead of just trying hard. And I don't get it. I said De'Aaron Fox, he always drops 40. He ended the game with 44 points tonight. Malik Monk ended the game with 26 points this night. And Davion Mitchell ended the game perfect from the field, 4 for 4 from 3 with 12 points. So this was obviously like a great game coming in from the Kings. One problem for the Lakers, other than everything else that I just mentioned with the Lakers, LeBron James was seen exiting and going to the locker room due to an ankle injury. He said he was trying to manage it, and he's been managing it for like the entirety of the season, which is absolutely ridiculous because he is dropping all of these points on a bum ankle. Like, if that doesn't scream greatest player of all time, I really don't know what does. And again, wasted a perfectly good performance from LeBron James. D'Angelo Russell this game, he actually was talking on a podcast saying he could barely jump, and he's cooking everyone's favorite player. Well, you didn't cook De'Aaron Fox tonight. He ended the game with 10 points, 3 of 10 from the field. Anthony Davis, 5 of 13 from the field, 14 points. Austin Reeves, 6 of 15 from the field, 18 points. And nobody else was able to get into double digits. Spencer Dinwiddie, so far, he has been far from the production that he's been on Brooklyn. And I don't even think he's scored in double digits in any of these Lakers games that I've seen. It's really concerning. And it's not like they're not implementing him in the rotation. He gets more minutes out of anyone that comes off of the bench. And that is a problem for the Lakers. Because if you are playing 24 minutes in a game just to get 8 points, that is not helping. Also, R.I.P. Kobe Bryant, 24 minutes, 8 points. But I digress about that game. Clearly, a lot of problems that the Lakers still have to figure out. Another team that has a lot of problems that needs to figure out is the Bucks. They're back to losing. They lost to the Golden State Warriors 125-90. This was a really bad loss. They had Giannis Antetokounmpo as well, and they still lost by this much. Damian Lillard ended the game with only 20 points. Giannis ended the game with only 23 points. And Bobby Portis, who's arguably going to be the sixth man of the year, ended the game with 20 points coming off of the bench. Other than that, nobody else on the Bucks was able to get into double figures. So it makes complete sense why that team just completely lost that game. They weren't hitting shots. And knowing Doc Rivers did not make any kind of adjustments for that. Like, a perfect example that I could bring up is the fact that Bobby Portis had a good game. Why was he only playing 24 minutes? Why were other players like Malik Beasley playing more minutes than him? Why was Brook Lopez playing more minutes than him? Why did Jay Crowder almost play as many minutes as him? That does not make any sense. And Pat Connaughton, did I botch that name? Pat Connaughton, forgive me if I completely botched that name. He played 22 minutes, but he ended the game with 6 points. Are you really going to play someone that long with only 6 points? Like, put Bobby Portis in the game a little bit longer. I understand, like, these players don't play the same position as him, but we are in an era of positionless basketball. Play Bobby Portis more. And it's always been a problem with Doc trying to make adjustments, and he just doesn't do it in game. And it's going to play in the playoffs. Mark my words, that problem is going to play in the playoffs. It will. Now, on the Warriors side, Steph Curry, he didn't score less than 10 points. He ended the game with 29 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. And Jonathan Kuminga, phenomenal player, ended the game with 20 points as well. He has definitely proven himself as a very vital piece to that Golden State Warriors team. He asked Steve Kerr to give him a chance. Steve Kerr gave him a chance, and so far it's proven to be the best move that Steve Kerr has done. And let's keep looking at the rest of the bench. Trace Jackson Davis ended the game with 15 points, and he shot 7 of 8 from the field. Very, very efficient. So it was overall, this was a dominant win for the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, like a dominant a game coming in from Steph Curry. The team shot 48% from 3, which is definitely the biggest reason as to why they ended up winning, because the Bucks only shot 28% from 3. And they really have to figure it out. Like, the Bucks, now is not the time to play around with your food. You have to figure it out. Otherwise, the rest of these teams in the East are going to take away that second seed, which they worked so hard to get to after, winning all of these games coming out of the All-Star break. Now the time is running out because the Knicks, they're going to be on the rise once all their players come back from injury, and they need that high seed to avoid playing, God forbid, play the Miami Heat again, and then the Miami Heat do their usual thing and beat the Bucks. I don't think that's going to happen this year, but we'll see, because we still have no idea. Now, another game that went down last night, a team that doesn't really get all that much coverage, the Orlando Magic. Paolo Banchero is probably the most irrelevant first overall pick in recent memory. Like, no media outlet talks about him for some reason. It might be because he's on the Orlando Magic, but it's not like he's playing bad, and it's not like he's not producing any great numbers. He ended the game with 25 points, 10 assists, and was arguably like the most well-rounded player on this team. He wasn't the leading scorer, however. The leading scorer of this game was Franz Wagner for the team, and they beat the Wizards 119-109. You guys already know how I feel about the Wizards and Jordan Poole. I think they are a major disappointment, and the fact that it took Jordan Poole to come off the bench to actually start playing basketball again really says a lot about his character, because it's like he only plays well when he needs to prove something to everyone. And even then, while he did lead the team in scoring, he did not play well at all. And something about Jordan Poole, I just don't understand his mentality. He goes for highlight reels more than he goes for wins. And whenever a player has that mentality, I just cannot stand it because the focus is them, and it's not team, which produces winning basketball. And that is part of the reason why the Wizards are on this losing streak. And quite funny, the Pistons, they hold the record for the longest losing streak in NBA history with 28. The Wizards, they haven't won a game in a while, and they are slowly creeping up to that record. And guess what the team is that they're going to play to decide whether they lose 28 straight games? The Detroit Pistons. So, if the Wizards continue losing, once they get to that 27th game, the next game that they play is against the Pistons, which will determine whether or not they are also going to hold the record for the longest losing streak in NBA history, which will be absolutely hilarious because Kyle Kuzma earlier this season, he tweeted when the Detroit Pistons were losing to the Boston Celtics, "Don't be that team." And so far, the Wizards, they have the exact same record as the Detroit Pistons. They are being that team right now. And it's incredibly ironic because it's like, how much worse can you get? Everyone was expecting Jordan Poole to average at least 30 points on the Wizards. He has the green light. He has all the room to shoot. He can take all the shots that he wants. And he's just been far from that in every single aspect of playing. Completely far from that. He is not the player that anybody thought that he was. But I digress. Now, I mentioned earlier about how Atlanta was fighting for a play-in spot. They recently just beat the Cavs after the Cavs came off of a very big win against the Boston Celtics, coming back from the largest deficit in the season. And there was still no Donovan Mitchell. So might play into a part as to why the Hawks ended up winning. But again, the Hawks didn't have Trae Young, so they were also shorthanded. And this is a little bit concerning for the Cavs because the fact that you're losing to a play-in team and you're expected to be better than the Knicks, not ideal. Definitely not ideal for this team. Jarrett Allen ended the game with 18 and 19, and Darius Garland ended the game with 15 and 7. And there was really the scoring was relatively spread, but there wasn't really anybody that ended the game with 20 points, which definitely played a part as to why they lost. The team shot 22% from three, very, very bad, compared to the Hawks, who shot 36% from three and 51% from the field. So it might have been just the Hawks' night, and it might not have been the Cavs' night. And that happens in the regular season. Some players, in some teams, they go on a moment where it's they just can't get a basket to save their life. And that's okay because we're all human. We don't expect everybody to just make every single shot. If you do, you are insane. But regardless, Bogdanović ended the game with 23 points. Saddiq Bey ended the game with 23 points as well. DeJounte Murray did not play well, but it didn't matter for them. 18 points, 7 for 21 from the field. Obviously, very piss-poor shooting. But again, didn't matter for them as they ended up getting the win. And a win is a win is a win. I will gladly take any wins that I can, especially as a Nets fan. Now, let's see. Some other important games that happened last night. OKC, they ended up winning against Portland. I mentioned earlier how Biyombo collapsed on the court just out of nowhere. Shai Gilgeous ended the game with 37 points. Chet Holmgren ended the game with 21 and 14. And Jalen Williams ended the game with 31 points as well. And this team, this Oklahoma City Thunder team, they're very odd. They could go they could go on a streak where they win against great teams and then they just immediately lose to some really bad teams the very next day. And it's really difficult to sort of scale exactly where they belong and what their ceiling is in the postseason because again, they beat great teams, but now they're losing to bad teams. Now, some other people, they might say, that's not really something to worry about because it's they're not going to play those bad teams in the playoffs. So the fact that they're winning against good teams now definitely plays a big part of winning in the playoffs. But still, it is really concerning how, a lot of these teams are getting close, are playing in close games with the Thunder, and the fact that they lost to the Pistons. But Fernie Simmons ended the game with 29 points. So far, he's looking like a great pickup for the Portland Trailblazers. I've had a hunch that he was going to be the next man up once Damian Lillard left, and so far that has proven to be true. He's very, very productive on the offensive side of the ball. He's averaging 22 points per game this season, so this was a great game from him. Jeremy Grant ended the game with 20 points, but obviously, like we know, this Trailblazers team, it needs a rebuild, and it needs to happen right now. And obviously, they're not where they are. They're not where the team. I expected them to be bad. I didn't really expect them to be this bad, however. But I guess that's what happens when you remove Dame from Rip City. Now, another game that happened was Clippers matching up against the Houston Rockets. They ended up winning the game 122-116. Sengun played phenomenally in this game, ended the game with 23 points, 19 rebounds, 14 assists. Triple-double, I said he was really, really similar to Jokic, and just a younger version of him with how he plays and how he can get all these assists and how he makes it look easy. And he is a great player. This is what the Rockets should build around from. Do not build around Jabari Smith. Do not build around Jalen Green. Do not do that. Don't do that. Build around Sengun. Sengun is the answer. He is the answer to all the Houston Rockets' problems. On the Clippers side, everybody had a great game. James Harden, he had 21 points. Kawhi Leonard, 28 points. And Paul George, also 21 points. So very, very spread with the scoring. Also very efficient with the scoring as well. And they shot 41% from three as a team, 55% from the field. And that was, I wouldn't say that was the difference maker with this team, with this team winning. It was more so they got hot when they needed to in this matchup, and they were lucky that there were some players on the Houston Rockets that did not really perform as well as they normally do, like Fred VanVleet, who ended the game 5 of 14 from the field with 15 points. And not only that, Jalen Green shot chucking a bunch, 6 for 14, 15 points. So obviously, this wasn't really a big win for the Clippers because we totally expected them to win. But still, this Rockets team, I have a feeling they're going to be really good coming to the future. They just need that chemistry down. Now, another game that went down was Philly losing to the Memphis Grizzlies. The Memphis Grizzlies are one of the bad teams in the NBA because they do not have Ja Morant for this season. Ja Morant, he had surgery after getting injured after a few days after returning from his suspension. And so this season is sort of chalked up for Memphis. If the box scores will actually load, then I can tell you exactly what the stats are, but it doesn't look like the box scores are going to load here, so I'm just going to completely ignore that game and talk about the Chicago Bulls beating the Utah Jazz by only 2 points. But still, right now the Chicago Bulls are 9th in the Eastern Conference and looking to play in the play-in, and DeMar DeRozan ended the game with 29 points. Kobe White ended the game with 25 points. Also, he's in the argument for being Most Improved Player of the Year. I actually think he's going to win that award. He's been playing very well with the Bulls. And Vucevic ended the game with 23 points. And they're doing this all without Zach LaVine, who is by far the team's best player. They do have the pieces to be a great team. It's just they just haven't been a great team. And I don't understand why they're losing to why they were losing to all of those teams with Zach LaVine. And they do this every single time Zach LaVine wants to get traded. The Bulls end up holding on to him, and it's really, really annoying. And it's what are you going to do with the team? Are you going to blow it all up, or are you going to actually try to compete? And the Jazz, they're in a rebuilding state right now, but that doesn't mean that they have bad players. They still have John Collins, and they still have Colin Sexton. John Collins ended the game with 25 points and 13 rebounds. Which is honestly very impressive. And let's see who else played well. Bryce Sensabaugh ended the game with 15 points and 12 rebounds as well. And Colin Sexton ended the game with 24 points. Jordan Clarkson ended the game with 15 points coming off the bench. And again, rebuilding team. I don't really expect much from the Utah Jazz anymore. Let's see if the box score finally loaded for the Sixers and the Memphis Grizzlies game. So I'm going to talk about that and end the segment because we're going to go on into the fourth segment shortly after. Nobody on the Sixers really played well. other than Kelly Oubre, who came off of the bench, I don't know why he's coming off of the bench now, but again, Nick Nurse, I mean, his substitutions, they're much better than Doc's, so I actually trust Nick Nurse a lot more with this team and the management of the lineup. And with this in mind, though, however, they still need Embiid, because Jaren Jackson Jr. ended the game with 30 points. I really think that if they had Embiid in this game, his production, along with his defense, would have canceled out Jaren Jackson's production, and they would have probably ended up winning this game, and they would probably be in a completely different situation than what they're in right now. 7th in the Eastern Conference, definitely like a very big drop-off for the Sixers, not what I expected from them whatsoever. And that's basically all the games that happened from last night. So now we are going to go on into the 4th segment, where I go ahead and look at the MVP rankings and seeing what players are in the top 10, if they're relatively the same or if they're going to be different. So I will be right back after this short break. And we are back with the second segment, the 4th segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this 4th segment, we are going to talk about the MVP standings as they are right now, and see exactly which players are going to be who's got the best chance of winning the MVP. And I'm just going to move that right there, and the slide is right there. And let me just go ahead and pull up the list right now. I have it on the side of my computer. I'm not going to pull it up on the screen this time. I know I do that for the power rankings most of the time, but I won't do it this time because I really actually want to talk about what I think about the MVP candidates and who I think is legitimately deserving of this award. So as of right now, the top 3 candidates for the MVP, they stay exactly the same. With Nikola Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Giannis Antetokounmpo in that order. And one thing that I also want to point out that really stood out with me, Giannis, since the All-Star break, he has averaged 31 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 66% from the field, and wait for this, 77% from 3. Now, obviously, his attempts, they aren't as much as, let's say, Damian Lillard, his teammate, or Steph Curry, or any of the other guards, but shooting 77% from 3 with the reputation that Giannis has being a bad shooter is phenomenal. Pardon me, I thought I was going to sneeze for a second, but I ended up not doing that. That's weird. But he's 3rd in the MVP rankings. I really do not think that Giannis has a shot whatsoever at winning the MVP. And it's more so an argument between Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on who wins the MVP. And I've seen a lot of media outlets sort of saying that Shai, he really deserves this MVP. And they've been comparing his season to a lot of other players in their MVP seasons, which I really do not agree with whatsoever. I don't like it when media outlets do that because, sure, the player might have won an MVP that season for averaging those numbers, But we're talking about this season. And one of the players that was that he was compared to in his MVP season was Russell Westbrook. And how Russell Westbrook was in his MVP season. He averaged a triple-double, 31 points per game. However, his team record wasn't really the best. In recent history, he has been the only player that was in this that won an MVP while not being one of the best teams in the NBA. Like the OKC, they were the 6th seed, I believe, that year, with only not even being able to reach 50 wins. And the reason why he won the MVP that year was because of the story behind it. Kevin Durant leaving the Oklahoma City Thunder to go join his enemy, and now Golden State Warriors, and now Russell Westbrook was expected to do everything on his own, which he did, averaging a triple-double, something that hasn't been done since Oscar Robertson. And with that story in mind, it makes sense how he was able to get the MVP. And I really believe that he deserved the MVP because he wouldn't have been anything. The Thunder wouldn't have been anything without Russell Westbrook and without his insane production. But when you're comparing MVP seasons, that sort of skews a lot of voters, and it's like there's no context put into why the player was the MVP for averaging those numbers. And it's like they don't take into account factors like another player that was mentioned was Kobe Bryant, like in his MVP season when he averaged 28 points per game. And Shai is averaging more points per game than Kobe Bryant did in his MVP season. He's averaging more steals. He's averaging better efficiency, all that kind of stuff. However, it might have won him MVP for that season. It's not going to win him MVP for now. And I don't understand why media outlets constantly do that. I think Jokic is going to run away with this award like he always does and like he's been doing these last few years because the triple-doubles that he gets for his team, they're valuable, and his numbers are incredibly valuable. He has an effective field goal of 60% from the field, shoots 57% from the field, and 35% from three. So, again, it's these triple-doubles that he puts up, and the production, and the fact that the Denver Nuggets are, once again, one of the best teams in the West. All of that takes into account, and all of that should be taken into account when talking about Jokic, because he is the main reason why the team is where they are. And I'm not saying that Shai isn't the main reason why the Oklahoma City Thunder aren't the team that they are, but his production compared to Jokic's production, it can't be measured. And it's really sad to say, because I think Shai is one of the best point guards in the NBA right now. And the fact that he's not going to win the MVP, the only point guard that's really above him is Luka Doncic. That's the only point guard that's really above him. And Luka is actually below him in the MVP rankings. And I've said this before on previous podcasts, Luka constantly gets held back by his teammates. Since the All-Star break, listen to these my career numbers that he's averaging. He's averaging 37 points, almost 10 rebounds, 9.9 rebounds, 11 assists on 52% from the field, 40% from three, and 84% from the free throw line. These are my career numbers. This is abnormal, the things that he's averaging. This is post All-Star break average, by the way, so it's not average for the entire season. But these are insane numbers from Luka Doncic, and he's leading the league in points per game, but again, like I mentioned earlier, his team just isn't where it needs to be in order for him to get that MVP. And it really is frustrating if you're Luka Doncic because you're always a front runner in these votings, but the team just constantly holds him back. And if the team keeps holding him back, he might ask to leave. I'm not entirely sure if that's really his play style. I really think he might stick with the Mavericks for the entirety of his career. But if relationships sour because he can't get the help that he needs and he can't get the good coaching that he needs, he might end up leaving. Jason Tatum, he is 5th in the MVP voting. Makes total sense. Best player on the best team in the Eastern Conference. He has the highest win percentage out of everyone on this list. So with that in mind, it makes sense how he's in the top 5 for MVP. I don't think Jason Tatum is going to end up winning this award, however, whatsoever, just because the rest of the Boston Celtics is incredibly stacked. They are a great team. And when you have a great team, it sort of hinders a player's MVP voting, because it's like, okay, I mean, like, yes, he's the best player on the best team, but that team is really, really good, and they have other players on that team that can also produce as well as Jason Tatum. But I digress on that. And the 6 on this list is Domantas Sabonis. A little bit odd seeing him at 6. I mean, like, the Kings, they aren't really on this list. They're, other than the Dallas Mavericks, they are not that much of like a winning team. They don't really win that many games. And, well, they do win a lot of games, but they're the 7th seed. That's sort of what I meant. That's what I meant to say. Pardon me. They're like the 7th seed. They're a bottom team. And, like, when you're a bottom team, again, it's like it gets very difficult to win the MVP. And let's see more on this list. Donovan Mitchell, even though he's been out, he's 7th in MVP votings. And I believe it's because, like, they're losing a couple of games without him, and they aren't really playing as well when he's not on the court. Donovan Mitchell is arguably one of the best playoff performers I've ever seen. It's like he always elevates his game come playoff time. And Kristaps Porzingis is number 8 on this list. What? Kristaps is number 8 in MVP voting? Like, really? Why is he ranked so high? He's averaging 20 points per game. How many rebounds is he averaging? He's averaging 6 rebounds per game, 2 assists, and 1 block, shooting 52% from the field and 37% from 3. How is he in the top 10? How is he what? How is he 8 in MVP votings? This does not make sense whatsoever. He's 8th in projections, so it's like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, how is he 8th? He's not even the second best player on his team. He's not even the second most valuable player on his team. Jaylen Brown is the second most valuable player on that team, in my personal opinion. I'm very, very surprised to see Kristaps in this MVP poll. I'm also surprised to see Anthony Davis in this MVP probability poll. And it's like, why is Anthony Davis here? He's not even, again, a little bit controversial, he's not even the best player on the Lakers. LeBron's the best player on the Lakers. Where is LeBron? He's not on this list whatsoever. Where is he? It does not make it makes no sense. This list is really, really, really bad. Once you go down, like, from 1 through 5, those are great. But once you go below that, it doesn't look great whatsoever. Another player that's in the running for MVP is Tyrese Halliburton. And that I sort of understand, because Tyrese is a very important focal point for that team and their offense, and he's one of the main reasons why the pacing of that team is super, super fast. He gets the ball down the court in an instant, and it makes total sense why he is in the MVP ladder, because, again, like, this team probably wouldn't be as good without him. Now, he's not averaging, like, the MVP numbers that you will, like 20 points, 11 assists, but Steve Nash, when he won the MVP, he was leading the team in assists. Now, the only thing that's really left for Tyrese is to, like, get that team record up there. Once he does that, then he'll be in the running for MVP. But as of where it stands right now, he's definitely not going to win this award anytime soon. But those are the top 10. And again, I completely disagree with Kristaps being in the top 10. And with that, we're done with the GSMC. We are done with the segment, and we are done with the show. That is the end of the show. Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. Before I end off the show, I'd like to remind everybody, as always, to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized. The link is gsmcpodcast.net. helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between me and you guys. And it also just helps the show. Now, that is the end for the show. Thank you once again for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.